Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, so today we're diving into something that literally affects almost every single one of us. We're talking about the hidden health impacts of our everyday listening devices. It's super fascinating, but honestly, kind of alarming too. We're going to unpack some really eye-opening data from the World Health Organization, Audible, and Speaker Driver to figure out what's actually happening inside our ears every single time we hit play. So here's a serious question we all need to ask ourselves right off the bat. Are your daily listening habits slowly, quietly costing you your hearing? It's a pretty scary thought, right? And the main reason it's so scary is because noise-induced hearing loss is entirely painless. It's completely invisible. For a lot of us, this gradual damage is happening right inside our ears, right at this very second, and we don't even realize it until, well, it's too late. Okay, let's just dive right in. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by looking at the hidden hearing epidemic. Then we'll break down how loud is too loud. After that, we're comparing in-ear versus over-ear headphones, going over how to recognize the warning signs, and finally, we'll wrap up with some really practical rules for safe listening. All right, starting with part one, the hidden hearing epidemic as a global health crisis. Now, it's absolutely crucial to establish right up front that this isn't just some personal problem affecting a handful of heavy metal fans. No, this is a massive, ongoing global health crisis. Get this. A staggering 430 million people currently suffer from disabling hearing loss. 430 million! That's literally over 5% of the entire world's population. And when experts use the term disabling, what they mean is these individuals cannot hear sounds below 35 decibels in their better hearing ear. To put that into perspective for you, 35 decibels is roughly the volume of a loud whisper. So if someone is loud whispering right next to them, it's just total silence. What's especially heartbreaking about this, and we see this directly in the data from the World Health Organization, is that this epidemic heavily impacts populations in low and middle income countries. In fact, a full 80% of the people affected live in areas where the specialized care services required to actually treat this condition are just commonly lacking. So what's actually happening on a physical level here? Well, it's a condition called noise-induced hearing loss, or NIHL. Basically, our inner ears contain these incredibly delicate sensory hair cells. They play a critical role in how our brains process sound. When they get constantly battered by loud sounds, like the audio pumping straight out of our earbuds, these little cells get fatigued. Over time and with prolonged exposure, that fatigue turns into irreversible permanent damage. They literally just get worn out. Which naturally brings us to part two. How loud is too loud? Actually, take a quick second right now and think about the volume pumping out of your own devices today. Okay, here's a warning that should honestly give every single one of us pause. 15 minutes. That's it. A lot of headphones, when you crank them all the way up to maximum volume, easily exceed 100 decibels. And at that intense level, you can cause permanent, irreversible hearing damage in less than 15 minutes. It happens so incredibly fast. Now, what's truly wild to realize is the rapid, almost shocking drop in your safe exposure times as decibels increase by just a tiny margin. Think about a doorbell that's usually around 80 decibels, and technically, you could safely listen to that for 40 hours a week. But bump that up to 95 decibels, which is roughly the sound of a motorcycle engine, and your safe listening time absolutely plummets. It drops down to just 1 hour and 15 minutes for the entire week. So the scale isn't linear at all. The danger accelerates incredibly fast. But, we can't just focus on those maximum volumes, because duration matters just as much as intensity. Research actually shows that listening for over 80 minutes a day makes you 4.5 times more likely to develop hearing damage. This means even moderate, seemingly totally safe volumes can become highly destructive if you're just constantly plugged in day after day. Let's move right along to part three, in-ear versus over-ear headphones. Because yes, the specific hardware you choose physically impacts your ear health. So think about in-ear headphones, like your standard earbuds. They sit right directly inside the ear canal. This placement artificially increases sound intensity and actually brings a much higher risk of wax buildup, irritation, and even infections. On the flip side, over-ear headphones encapsulate your entire ear. This provides much better physical isolation, it places significantly less pressure on the eardrum itself, and it allows for way better airflow. Overall, they are just far safer for your long-term hearing health. Oh, and while we're on the topic of hardware, we definitely have to talk about active noise canceling. This technology is a real game changer. It's a fantastic preventative tool. because it automatically reduces all those annoying external background sounds. It basically completely removes the urge to crank your music up just to drown out the world. But, and this is a big but, it only protects you if you stay disciplined about keeping the actual device volume low. All right, section 4, recognizing the warning signs. Let's shift our focus to your body's internal alarm system and talk about how you can actually tell when this damage is actively occurring. The absolute most famous warning sign here is tinnitus. Now, we've all been there. A temporary ringing in your ears after leaving a super loud concert is pretty common. That's just your sensory cells experiencing some temporary transient fatigue. However, if that ringing, buzzing, or hissing turns into a persistent sound that just will not go away, well, that is a major flashing red flag that you've got permanent cellular damage in your inner ear. The really crucial takeaway here is that you need to be paying close attention to these symptoms. Beyond just tinnitus, you want to look out for things like muffled or distorted hearing, or even a weird feeling of pressure, almost like a fullness in your ears. Maybe you're suddenly having difficulty picking up high-pitched sounds like birdsong or your alarm clock, or you're having trouble following conversations in a noisy restaurant. If you're experiencing any of this, your body is literally begging you to go see a specialist for a hearing test, or at the very least, grab a self-monitoring tool like the Hear WHO app to check yourself out right away. And that brings us perfectly to our final section, rules for safe listening. We really want to pivot to the solutions here and empower you with some highly actionable, super easy best practices to protect your hearing without ever having to give up your favorite podcasts or playlists. Honestly, these habits are so easy to adopt. First up, start monitoring your exposure with smart apps. Second, whenever you can, choose well-fitted noise-canceling headphones. Third, and this one is so important, make sure you're giving your ears a break in a quiet space for just 5 to 10 minutes every single hour. And finally, strictly limit your device's volume to below 60% of its maximum capacity. At the end of the day, safe listening is really just about proactively managing two simple things: the intensity of your exposure and the duration of it. In fact, the absolute gold standard for daily earbud and headphone use is known as the 60-60 rule. It's a brilliantly simple, totally memorable formula to prevent permanent damage. Are you ready? Listen for a maximum of 60 minutes at a time at no more than 60% of the maximum volume. That's it. It is literally that easy to protect yourself. But, okay, what about those times when you can't control the volume around you, like at a crazy loud concert or working in a really noisy environment? Well, that is when foam earplugs become absolutely essential. But here's the catch. They only work if you use them correctly. So here are the actual physical mechanics you need to know. First, you roll the plug tightly between your thumb and forefinger to really compress it down. Second, reach over your head and pull your ear up and back. This physically opens up the ear canal. And third, insert the plug to a comfortable depth and just hold your finger right there until you feel the foam expand and create a nice, secure seal. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to challenge you with one last, highly practical rule of thumb. If your headphones were off your head right now, maybe just resting around your neck, could you still hear the music playing? Because if the answer is yes, they are way too loud. So, do yourself a huge favor. Check your volume right now, take a look, and ask yourself, if you don't turn that volume down today, what are you going to be left hearing tomorrow?